everyone, and happy new year. We're starting another new year together. We call this meeting to order tonight, and welcome all the guests here this evening also. First, in regards to the agenda, we're going to make a little correction to the agenda. On the information item number 3, the category 2020, and that's going to be brought up as a discussion item, number 1. And it is also the action item as number 1 also. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening. Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, Gina. Any discussion? All those in favor? 6-0. Next, we have delegations, and there being none on the agenda this evening, we're going to move on to recognition. And I would like to take this moment to honor 2 of our board members that have served on this board for many years, and for their dedication and all the extra time and effort that they have spent for this board. This being their last meeting, official meeting. I know I asked Greta to summon all the hours that you have spent on the board in meetings. She has laughed at me. Tremendous amount of hours that's been put into this. So then I thought, well, maybe we can just do a summary of all the pictures, all the years that you guys been on board, and see how much you have changed throughout the years. Just like the president, it's more gray hair, right? See what you're in for. However, it was disappointing because you have aged very well also. But I did make a summary of the 16 years for Monty and the 7 years. So I'm going to pass that out so you can kind of go down memory lane. And I want you to note that when Monty started, the pictures were black and white. Sorry. So anyhow, we do appreciate all we do appreciate all the time and effort that you have spent, and the new board members, if you want to see, because I'm Mr. Buttonoff, you guys in these pictures. So anyhow, I would like to take this moment to thank both of you. So Monty, 16 years, by the way, on the board. However, at the KSB conference, there was one gentleman there that was it 36 years on the board member? So if you want to come back, the next election, 4 years. So thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Rhonda, 7 or 8 years? 8 years. Thank you very much. Cupcakes. We started the meeting off good.
I will admit my hair was a heck of a lot darker.
I guess the black and white picture doesn't.
Take one, pass it on, however you want to do it up here. Those are just plain ones, and these are peanut butter chocolates. Help yourself.
So if that's okay, we're going to keep running the meeting. We have a pretty full agenda tonight. We have Mr. Sechrist here tonight too, and we'll get on to election for another meeting. So we'll move on to the Youth 298 March Program presentation by Hayworth.
I just kind of threw this together so that I didn't talk too long. What I'm just going to talk about is just a little bit of the basics history of what I have been doing. I started here in 1991, or the 1991 school year, and fresh out of college, so just kind of a little crazy. I inherited a program from Mr. Penalto. And in that course, I had 3 hours at the high school, and I was 3 hours at the grade school in that year. I inherited Intro to Art for the whole entire year for 1 hour at the high school, and then I had semester courses. And I did that for several years, and then in 1997, the high school changed to block scheduling, and then I inherited junior high art because I had an extra hour to fill because of block scheduling. There was 4 hours every day. And so the grade school still stayed the same. And then in 2017, we changed to a 7-hour day, so junior high got cut to keep the 3 high school art hours for those electives. At the grade school for the whole entire time, or for since we started from 1992 when we started all-day kindergarten, I only had grades 1 through 6 because they were the only ones that were there. Because prior to that, kindergarten was AM and PM, and I was only at the grade school half of the day. Once we started doing all-day kindergarten, I picked up kindergarten class, so now I am K through 6, and currently just K-6 in high school. At one point, I did have everybody. That's just kind of a little bit of a background. For 27 years at the grade school, I pushed a cart from room to room. I would go to 3 different classrooms during the day at the grade school. The teachers would either choose to stay or they would leave. In about 2015, I started hearing a lot of things with all of my art teacher places. They started talking about TAB, or Teaching for Artistic Behavior. And I was like, hey, this is kind of cool stuff. So it's like, okay, high school, I could do that. I have a room, not a big deal. Things are already set out, and just kind of switch things up a little bit. Grade school probably wasn't quite as easy for a cart because you had to have supplies available, and more supplies than what I was able to put through. I can't switch forward. So TAB is basically, it equals choice, which is pretty big right now. And basically what this is it's letting the students choose. Before, what all we were doing is I was doing teacher-led things, I was doing projects with them. They were doing exactly what I was doing. And the majority of them were really good at copying what I just was displaying. Which, at the grade school level, that's a pretty good process because you've got to, copying is a great way to develop a style or figure out a different ways to do things. For TAB, it's Teaching for Artistic Behavior is what TAB stands for. And their 3 basic concepts are: what do artists do, the child is the artist, and the classroom is the studio. In 2017, I was able to, Mr. Cook approached me and said, hey, how would you feel about having art? And I was like, that would be awesome! And so we are, there it goes. And so he was like, okay, and I said, it would be awesome if this classroom at the grade school could have a sink, because I would still like to paint. I was still doing that, moving around, it was just a little bit crazy. I figured out a system to actually take watercolors into each of the grade school classrooms. And so it worked pretty much, except for the teachers had all these wet paintings laying around when I left the room. But I kept hearing, at the grade school, the teachers didn't like leaving the classrooms when I had to come in. And I didn't care if they stayed, it just was, I was in control. The kids just kind of were instructed to ignore the classroom teachers, and it was my classroom. Most of them left because they did not like the fact that the kids were walking around and they were going over to the cart and grabbing this and going back and sitting down. And it just wasn't it was pretty chaotic to most of them. So most of them chose to go to the workroom, which really wasn't very conducive for that block of plan time that they had. So when I was able to get this sink, or get this classroom with the sink in it, I was like, well, that would be great. And then I was like, ooh, here's that tab stuff that was going on. I could set out things could be put out and used as the kids wanted to use them. Another reason that I switched to tab also at the high school, and I did this all in the same year, so it was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Grade school and high school, so it was like starting all over. Year one again, because everything was totally different. But at the high school, I kept hearing the kids say, I couldn't get into art because of this core class or this upper level class that I wanted to take. And I still had those kind of classes set up where it was drawing and painting 1 hour, ceramics and printmaking the next hour, and then sculpture and what was the other one? And then sculpture and printmaking were in another hour. And they're like, well, I really wanted to take ceramics, but I couldn't fit it in. And I was like, okay, I got tired of hearing this. I was like, okay. Went in and approached the counselor and I said, how about if we change all of these classes to Art 1, Art 2, Art 3, and Art 4 at the high school? And they're like, okay, great. And so then we switched things at the high school too. So a little bit about what I do at the grade school. I adapted the tab. When I got into my first room, and then I had to move 2 years later, so that was chaos again. But this was the adaptation that I used at the grade school. So I drew this up on my board, and I made 5 things that each one of the grade school kids was responsible for. And this was mostly, I really hit this hard in 3rd grade through 6th grade. They had to come up with their idea. They had to organize all those ideas in their head, or they could do it in their sketchbooks. They had to make a plan. How am I going to complete this? And then they had to organize materials, set up their workspace, so they would go collect whatever they were using, bring it back to their table, set it up, and then they would start their creating process for the 3rd step. As they were working, things that were going great, they just kept right on going. When they had to run into challenges, of course, everybody does. Things just don't go the way you're seeing them. And so they have to make changes as they work, and then they turn it in for their grade. Each of their projects are graded on different aspects. I always tell my kids, you guys are not apples and apples in this classroom. We're apples and bananas and cherries and watermelons and all different kinds of things. So, when I give a grade for one kid, it's going to be a little bit different based on the ability levels. And I do that even in the grade school too. I do it really hard at the high school because they just have so many mental blocks. I do a little bit different thing of these 5 processes with my high school kids too, but it's basically the same thing. They are in charge of what they would like to process through. Oops, this is changing up there. At the grade school, we have several different things that we are working through. I have different areas in the room set up. There's one area where all the painting supplies are. There's a place where all the papers and the drawing materials are. And the kids are able to go and find what they need, bring it back to the groups of tables that I have set up, and then they work through their process. I've got several different areas. There's 6 up there. Within those, there's other little parts that they can pull out and do. So basically we're doing painting and drawing. I have fibers, sculpture, sewing, and then I have 3 blocks where they can do 3-dimensional sculptures at the grade school. They're really kind of liking the blocks. I introduced those 2nd grade, 2nd semester, and we do another one in 3rd grade. And they're not the Lego blocks that actually stick together and stay. We have wooden planks, the Kivo blocks, which is a lot more challenging. And I really have a group of 3rd graders that are just loving these. So anytime I say, okay, you got a free choice day, they're like, can we do blocks? And I'm like, yes, you can. And they go, and there's one book that goes with the blocks, and they're really making some really cool structures, which when you're just using little planks, the balance and the science and the STEM stuff that is coming out in that is pretty awesome. And they're looking at these little pictures in this book and they're going, how did they make that? And I was like, why don't you figure it out? And I walk away. And they're like, oh, that wasn't the answer I wanted. But they're working through the process. So there's a lot of problem solving involved in what they are doing also. I introduced sewing with my 3rd graders. It's quite a challenge. They have to thread the needles and we make little squishy character things. Before Christmas we just made a real basic Christmas ornament and they had to sew the sides and they had to sew on decorations and things and then sew it shut, stuff it, and then finish that end. So it's just a basic thing. I do have even 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders that say, can I sew this project? And I'm like, yes you can, what do you want to make? And they're like, oh, okay. Right now all I'm using is felt for the sewing center, but I've got some other things that I'm going to be bringing in for the 5th and 6th graders, the upper level kids. I got some old t-shirts and things, and I just got a donation from a lady that has a whole bunch of fabric. She's trying to get rid of her. She's getting older and she can't do as much of it, so she wanted to get rid of it. It's like, I'll take it all. So we're going to be doing those kind of things. At the high school, like I said before, I switched all those classes to be involved more to where the kids can come in. And with that tab style, the kids are producing their artwork. So right now my courses include Art 1, Art 2, Art 3, Art 4, and then I also have an Art Explorations. And they can take these any hour that they want, that the 3 high school art classes are offered. Art 1, you have to pass first semester of Art 1 to get into anything else. In that first semester, I do a series of boot camps, what I call boot camps, but it's just like quick, hard, fast. We're going to experiment with this stuff and then we're going to move on. We do a drawing, a painting, a printmaking, a ceramic hand building. And I try to get all these done before Christmas break. And then whatever time is left, they get to then go and do their choice projects. They're telling me, this is what I want to do after that point. And then second semester now, those kids who passed first semester are going to go ahead and go on and they're doing projects. And today we started our first project for the second semester in high school. And they have the same options and plus a lot more things. I give them a list of different projects that they can pick from, and I have some that are starred. I have all of the materials to create this from start to finish. The ones that aren't starred, there are options that they can do, but they will need to acquire the tools. And on that list I have things, they're marked with a little dollar sign with a line through it. They're like totally free. Their enrollment fee paid for, the papers or whatever, and so they can have options to pick from. And those will vary. So they have a lot of different options. They can always just go find things. Somebody wanted to do some, last year I had a student who just painted 4 different cow skulls. They had cow skulls in their pasture, they brought them in, and they did different types of painting. They did some drip painting, they actually painted an actual picture on one of them, they melted crayons on another one, so they were just using the skull as their surface, and then they were doing different things. So the exploration is pretty crazy. I also have Art Explorations as a senior class. They had to have had 3 years of art before that. This one was really mostly intended for students who were going to go on and do art in college or go to some kind of an art school so they could prepare their portfolio, kind of dive into a little bit more stuff. In the other art classes, I encourage the kids to try something new. They get into this thing where I can only do watercolors, this is my thing. I said, well, that's great, that's your thing, but you do need to do something else. explore something else. It's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to be bad at some things. You're not gonna be good at everything, and it's okay. But you never know until you try it. That was just kind of real quick what we're doing. Like I said, that was 3 years ago I switched into this. It has worked out pretty easily for kids to get into class. They only have to pass the first semester of Art 1, and they can leave that second semester if they want to, and then they can come back and they can move on to Art 2 for the next time. So, this is the first year. Haven't tried this out yet, but we opened up. Before it was you were just in there for the whole year or you just got out. This year I decided, well, you know what? We could go ahead and let new people come in second semester, and I'll just teach that Art 1 thing first semester again. So we'll see how it goes. So that started today too, for 1 hour. So it's just kind of changing things. It's like, okay, this is only the 3rd year I've been doing this, so it's like, I still feel like a new teacher, but it was a good change. The kids have really enjoyed it. The kids who, come back, and I have up to Art 3 now, so this is the 3rd year, and they are like, okay, I've got to start doing something. It's like, okay, now, the challenge is a little bit different, and I have to keep telling people, with the Art 3, the hour the Art 3 kids are in, I got Art 1, Art 3, and Art Explorations all in the same room. So everybody's doing all the different kinds of things. So it looks kind of chaotic when people walk in, because they're expecting everybody to be doing the same things. But, I've got people standing up, I got people over at the sink, I got people running the airbrush. So they have a lot of things going on. The grade school is really chaotic because they're talking the whole entire time they're doing things, so it's rather loud. But they are, if you're actually looking at them, the majority of them are doing something. Or I'm walking around saying, your mouth is moving way more than your hands. You need to make your hands move more. And they're like, oh, okay. So, I don't know if you have any questions or anything like that, but
As board, would also like to appreciate you as a teacher, because I know you also got awarded the Kansas Art Education Association K-12 Teacher of the Year. So we would like to present you. Okay, so with that, thank you. So with that, move on to routine matters. Need a motion to approve the minute for the regular meeting of December 2nd, 2019.
So moved.
Thank you, Monty. Do I have a second? Thank you, Patty. Any discussion? All in favor? 6-0. Next, we have the clerk and treasurer's report. And then motion to accept the report. Thank you, Gina. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Monty. Any discussions? All in favor? 6-0. Next, we have payment of the bill. Need a motion to accept those.
I'll make the motion to accept them.
Thank you, Rhonda. Do I have a second? Thank you, Gina. Any discussion? All in favor? 6-0. And next, we have an executive session for about 45 minutes. We need a motion to go into an executive session.
Move to go into executive session.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Patty. A motion by David, second by Patty, that USD 298 for education going into executive session at 6:55. For 45 minutes, we hear Sechrist, leadership specialist for KSB, for the purpose of discussing applicants for the superintendent position who will be deemed non-elected personnel, and the Board of Education return to open meeting at 7:40 in the Board of Education conference room. The executive session is required to protect the privacy of non-elected personnel under comma. All those in favor? 6-0.